Now I try to answer a question posed during yesterday's briefing concerning the present status of the Novi Sad oil refinery. This image is of the Novi Sad refinery taken before the present conflict. As was mentioned in yesterday's question, the facility is quite large and would take a large effort to destroy when taking into consideration our great concern for reducing damage and injury to civilians and civilian infrastructure. However, it is possible to seriously reduce the production of oil from a refinery by targeting key components of the production cycle, and the following image is the result of an early attack against this facility, and the effect of this attack was to curb production. Since this time, we have also targeted the storage facilities holding fuel already refined.
Crashed this evening in Albania while it was en route to the Tirana airport returning from a routine training mission. The attack helicopter the initial reports say that the helicopter may have hit a tree and went down about 2 miles short of the runway at Tirana. A Pentagon statement said that the helicopter was conducting routine training and about 40 kilometers northwest of the airport. Army sources say the two-man crew escaped the wreckage, which burst into flames after they got out. They were helicoptered to Tirana, Albania, where they're in good condition. Reports said that this helicopter was fully loaded with arms, and they began to explode after the helicopter burst into flames. This comes on the day when the Pentagon announced that it will begin dispatching some of those extra warplanes to Europe in order to help intensify NATO's bombing campaign against Yugoslavia.
Direct to Romeo 5.
The first of about 300 additional planes dispatched to the war effort will be some 30 tankers, planes like the KC-135, which can refuel NATO strike planes in midair to allow them to stay up longer. But some 270 other U.S. planes requested by NATO are still on hold, while NATO works out plans to base them in new places, like Hungary, NATO's newest member, which shares a border with Yugoslavia. The Pentagon insists there's no problem finding room for the extra planes.
The person that has a problem with basing is Milosevic. He's losing his bases while we get more of them.
Sources say the Pentagon will announce Tuesday it will call up 15 to 20,000 reserve troops, mostly Air Force personnel, needed to fly and maintain the planes. Meanwhile, NATO continues to focus much of its bombing on oil facilities and supply lines. It's taken down the last bridge over the Danube at Novi Sad, cutting a key supply route to the south.
The helicopter crashed in Albania. We don't know why it went down, but there is no indication it was shot down. It happened about 2 miles short of the runway at Tirana Airfield, where the Apaches are based. The two-man crew is reported to be in good condition, but this is not an auspicious beginning for the Apaches.
On day 33, the last of the Apache helicopters finally arrived in Albania. They are deadly to tanks, but they are also a low and slow-flying target for Serb gunners. Sending them into combat will significantly increase the risk of losing pilots. There are less than 24 Apaches, but when you factor in all the other helicopters and troops needed to support and protect them, it adds up to a 5,000-man force. The Apaches are a small fraction compared to the 300 additional aircraft the Pentagon will be sending to Europe as NATO builds up the forces needed to conduct strikes 24 hours.
The attack helicopter Monday night. The U.S. Army says the Apache, like this one here, was on a nighttime training mission about 30 miles north of Tirana Airport. Then it suddenly went down, caught fire, and was completely destroyed. Both crew members managed to escape with minor injuries.
The warrant officer sustained minor bruises, lacerations, and a fractured finger. The captain sustained bruises and lacerations.
The U.S. Army is not releasing the names of the injured for security reasons. Both crew members are recovering at Tirana Airport and are expected back on duty shortly. The U.S. Army says there are no initial indications of any hostile fire. The Apache is now in the process of being recovered, and a full investigation has been launched into the cause of the crash. Last Saturday, an Apache was forced to land in a field in northern Italy after signs of engine trouble. Lieutenant Colonel Dornan says there's no systemic problem.
We are not going to be wavered by this incident. It's one of the things that's the cost of doing business, and we're driving on with our mission. No impact whatsoever.
It's still not clear when the mission to fly into Kosovo will be launched. All the Army has said is it will be soon.
There was a picture behind it. An SA-3 air defense site near Obrava. 13 April from a F-15 gun camera. Okay. I don't know who moved across the bridge, but I hope they got out of the way in time. Here's the Mura Railroad Bridge, 22 April. Step by step, bit by near Kosovo, 19 April. Damaged tanks, where we've taken them out in the northern area of Kosovo. You can see them on the road where they were picked off by military aircraft. And going after fuel trucks. You can see the secondary explosion in that one, so there was a little bit in that fuel truck. And that takes facility in Pristina. Plant, 22 April.
Least on the humanitarian aid side of operations, but everywhere the talk was of the Apache crash. There could hardly have been a worse start to the Apache's mission in Albania than this. The last of the strike helicopters to have joined the force only arrived yesterday. Within hours, the detachment had lost one of its aircraft. It crashed during a night flight training operation in the mountains about 30 miles north of the airbase. The pilot and navigator walked from the burning wreckage with only minor injuries and were medevaced to hospital on the base. The US Army said today it was all part of the risk of doing business here.
You have to train in an aggressive manner to go into combat. And the way we train is we train at night under blackout conditions. We train in a demanding environment because in the long run, this method of training will save lives and accomplish the mission. And that's really it. The bottom line is, again, you cannot take the risk out of this business. We're flying in mountainous terrain, unfamiliar terrain, and we're flying very, very strict mission profiles. So it's a risky business, and that's what we've got to accept. Everybody's trained to do that, and everybody knows that. Every attempt to reduce those risks is made. No resource is spared, no human effort is spared to reduce the risk to our pilots. Force protection is number one.
An investigation is underway into what caused the accident. The crashed helicopter is completely destroyed. It was armed when it went down. The wreckage has been made safe and returned to the base. A request has already been made for a replacement aircraft.
air. Another Serbian fuel depot left burning after a NATO raid. Refineries and oil depots in Yugoslavia's main towns and cities are a recurring target of alliance warplanes. NATO claims its bombs have severely depleted fuel reserves, but the Serbian military machine still lumbers on. A trickle of fuel is apparently still getting through, and wherever those cracks are, NATO is determined to...
The alliance's top commander has warned Belgrade that the air bombardment so far is only a fraction of what is to come. The Apache helicopter force has been deployed but not sent into combat, and one has already crashed. The immediate aftermath was filmed through a night sight. The fireball as it caught fire, and then the shouts of soldiers trying to clear the area.
We got the guys, let's go. Take your time, let me go down front, okay? Everybody off this hill, let's go, off the hill, sir.
The crew escaped, and the Americans have insisted it will not affect the Apache mission.
The British commitment in the Balkans strengthens almost daily. RAF planes flew into Greece today, bringing 320 more troops, part of the second battle group, and described by one officer as confident and eager to get the job done. And therein the problem. No one has yet defined what the precise job is, other than the inevitability now that one day these soldiers will be inside Kosovo. In the seaport a few miles away, a convoy stretching 1.5 miles long had been squeezed on board a Royal Fleet auxiliary ship which had taken 10 days to get here from Britain. This is part of KFOR, the Kosovo force, and includes a reconnaissance squadron from the Household Cavalry trained to operate ahead of frontline troops, and also bridge-laying equipment. The signals to Belgrade would seem clear. It's the nature of the job that soldiers expect a hostile environment, but perhaps not from an ally and fellow NATO member like Greece. Yet such is the strength of anti-NATO sentiment on the streets here, that any further movement by these troops towards Macedonia and the Kosovo border will now have to take place under cover of darkness. So before tomorrow's daylight, these troops will be in Macedonia. Colin Baker, ITN, Thessalonica.
5 weeks into the war, the call-up came. President Clinton signed the execute order Tuesday, and the first of up to 33,000 military reservists were told to pack up and prepare to go.
Today, we are calling up approximately 2,100 guardsmen and reservists as the first increment of the PSRC. These 2,100 men and women will meet our immediate need to deploy additional air refueling aircraft, crews, support people, and associated equipment.
The order includes an additional 21 air-to-air refueling tankers. It is part of what NATO's military commander says he needs to carry out the stepped-up air campaign against Yugoslavia.
We've asked Airfield. As you'll see, there are 4 fuel tanks, of which one has been destroyed in an attack. The blast has left the others apparently untouched, necessitating further attacks. The second photograph shows 3 destroyed aircraft at Pristina Airfield. I think it helps to explain why battle damage assessment is not a quick and easy process. The aircraft in question have been destroyed to the point where, at a glance, there's little evidence that they were ever there in the first place. The next group of 2 photographs demonstrates a rather different point. They show damaged houses at Dikana and Gorny Strikok. What you will see is the way that groups of houses are missing their roofs, but the main structure of the buildings remains undamaged. This is typical of houses that have been destroyed by ground troops. Damage from bombs would cause blast damage to the sides of the building around the point of impact, and not just the loss of the roofs. The final 2 photographs are of groups of refugees near Tuzile and Petrovica. You will see how hard it is to distinguish precisely what is going on and what you're seeing. That is why, when we're selecting ground targets, we take great care and use information from a variety of sources before confirming a target. It also...
The Javanjica radio relay site, one element of the command and control structure. The integrated air defense system was again targeted as shown. Petroleum storage and production facilities continue to be targeted, including the facilities at Pristina and Podzega. This is a video of a previous attack against the POL facility. Against the Podgorica Airfield in Montenegro. These were precision surgical strikes that were highly sensitive to avoid damages to civilian infrastructure, such as the runway and civilian terminals. Military hangars, petroleum storage facilities, air defense radar, and numerous Super Galeb aircraft parked in revetments and apron areas were among the targets. 2 other Super Galebs were also targeted at Sutomor during an attack against the Dinotinovici radar site in southwest Montenegro. While we would have preferred not to have attacked sites in Montenegro, Podgorica Airfield is becoming an important operating location, an Army command post at Prizren Army headquarters. The integrated air defense system was again targeted in our continuing campaign to prevent the Serb military from reconstituting the system. This is a video taken 2 nights ago of a similar attack against the Banja Koviljaka radio relay facility. This was part of a multi-aircraft attack, and after the bomb impact, you will see the results of these other strikes. Petroleum storage and production facilities were targeted, including the facilities at Smederevo and Podzega. We again struck lines of communications, including several bridges. Serbian forces infrastructure were struck, including the Ruma and Podzarevac Army barracks, the Belgrade Army Training Center, and various Army storage areas. The following is a video of an attack on the 26th April against the Dakovica Army garrison in southwest Kosovo. The following is the post-attack image of the same structure. The image also shows damage from previous attacks against the same facility.
A new road crossing and nearby rail link were both severed, further increasing difficulties in travel. Serbian state TV also reported the heaviest night's bombardment so far on Montenegro, the smaller and pro-Western state in the Yugoslav Federation. The skyline of its capital, Podgorica, lit up as the city withstood a third wave of strikes in 24 hours that reportedly claimed the country's first civilian deaths. Fuel installations were again hit, with large explosions seen at the oil refinery in the northern city of Novi Sad. It comes as the embargo on imported fuel has led to a halving of petrol rations.
For Wing Commander John Cook.
Pilots from as far afield as Ukraine, America and the United Arab Emirates attend the morning briefing of the British Manned Helicopter Coordination Centre. It's they who make sure everyone knows what everybody else is doing. There are updates on the weather.
Winds a little bit of an inversion at 3,000 feet, temperature up to 16.
Intelligence reports give the latest on Serb activity on the Kosovo border.
There is no updated threat information to helicopter operations in northern Albania.
The man in charge is Wing Commander John Cook. As well as making sure aid gets to the refugee camps, he's also now considering ways of easing the human pressure on the camps themselves.
We've been asked to look at it to see how we can assist the UNHCR in moving people away quickly to try and free up more space there. My calculations say that at best I can only move between 2,500 and 3,000 a day, which is probably less than a quarter of what they would really need to move to make it work.
Wing Commander Cook is effectively the airfield manager. He says he's the honest broker between nations who have to live and work side by side for the humanitarian cause.
Wing Commander Cook and his team are responsible for coordinating the flights into and out of this airbase of 37 helicopters flown by 10 different nationalities, none of which are under the direct command of the Wing Commander himself. It means his task is often a frustrating one.
Yeah, what is the problem? Right. Your vehicles being just here. Yeah. No vehicles on the hard standing. The UNHCR need this to turn round. That was the first agreement. We have made space for your vehicles in the places like this. Yeah. Okay? They've got to be moved.
But before there's time to carry out the Wing Commander's request, 2 Royal Navy Sea Kings arrived from HMS Invincible. Is there a role for them here in Tirana? Wing Commander Cook will be the man who accommodates them if the answer is yes.
Homeless, and that's a classic example of a laser-guided bomb directly.
Radar signals.
The Prowler is going to be responsible for identifying any Serbian air defense radars that have been turned on, figuring out what to do about them, and jamming them.
But while the Prowler is sophisticated, it is not foolproof.
Where's that all-important ejection seat control?
Right between your legs and right over your head. And
you have to do both of them?
One or the other will work. And they work quite well, actually.
As Lieutenant Commander Ray Roberts and his 3 crewmates found out over Saudi Arabia 1 year ago. After his plane caught fire, he pulled the cord, and the 4 of them parachuted to safety as their plane went down in flames.
Anytime that you take an airplane flying, there's always a risk.
For Science and Technology Week, I'm Don Knapp.
The NATO effort in Yugoslavia depends on coordination among the many countries in the alliance. NATO is trying out a high-tech system that should make it easier for colleagues to keep in touch on future peacekeeping missions.
Evacuation operation.
Rebels battle government forces on a computer screen while outside nations plan to intervene. It's not Kosovo. It's a training exercise for the next Kosovo.
We need to be better prepared than we've been in the past.
27 nations are playing peacekeeper in a 5-day simulation at the NATO summit in Washington, training commanders for a nearly impossible job: to step into the world's bloodiest feuds and say, all right, you two, break it up.
Whatever peacekeeping operation we're involved in, whatever conflict we're involved in, we find that there are different lessons learned.
Blue is friendly, red, in this case, what we're doing today, is suspect.
The fictitious nation of Azure is torn by fighting. Simulated news reports show civilians at risk. Efforts to bring peace through diplomacy fail.
The situation in the capital is continuing to deteriorate. We've had reports of looting that have been going on.
Officers in training huddle in front of their screens as unseen generals in a room in Norfolk, Virginia, toss one new crisis after another into the mix. A uranium plant that must be protected. Evacuees who must be airlifted.
At this right here, a Finnish infantry company which is securing the soccer field, which is the landing zone for the helicopters.
You could call this war.com. Fighting men and women using the same tools you and I use in the office. Email, encrypted of course. Video teleconferencing.
Using warning shots against ground targets.
document sharing, as with this situation report, showing the current position of military forces and a no-fly zone marked by the yellow lines at top and bottom.
What we're trying to do is portray what has occurred in the past 24 hours.
It's something which has been missing so far.
What the technology is able to unravel is it makes it easier for us to plan. It makes it far easier for us to communicate across this whole range of different agencies. And it reduces to a sensible proportion that